We are now on Daf Yud Gimel, and we'll start with the statement of Rav Shimon ben Pazi. Rav Shimon ben Pazi Kiyami Pasach. This is at the end of the skinny lines, the thin line. Be Divrei Yomim, when he would darshan Divrei Yomim, Omar Hachi. Here's how he opened up his Russia. Cold Farecha. All of Divrei Yomim Echadheim. What does that mean? Kol Dvarecha Echadheim. It means that sometimes the Torah uses different names for one person, and on the surface we look at it and we think it's referring to different people, but it's really referring to the same name. And for that we have to darshan the names to see what the names mean and why there are different facets or dimensions of one particular individual, even though they're different names. And it means Shanu Yodim L'Darshan. First, we have to darshan those names. And he gives the example from Divrei Yomim Aleph, Eric Dal. And now we're referring to Kolek Ben Yefun. And Basio Basparo was married to Kolek Ben Yefuna. The Ito HaYehudiyah Yolda es Yered Avi Gidar ves Cheber Avi Socho ves Yekusiel Avi Zanoach V'ele Bnei Bisya Bas Paro Asher Lakach Mored. And a lot of these names will refer to Moshe Rabbeinu, and there'll be another name for Kalev. Amai Korile, why does the pasuk, first of all, Bisya, why does it refer to as Yehudiyah? Right, Ishto, the wife of Kalev, which we know happens to be Bisya Bas. Why is she called here Yehudiyah? And the answer is Al Shem Shekafra B'Avodah Zarah. She rejected idolatry. The Chsiv, at the beginning of Shmos, it says, "Vaterid Basparo Lirchotz Al Hayor." What is the Torah telling you? The eternal Torah about the fact that Basparo went to dip in the Yor. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Sheyarda Lirchotz B'Gilulei Beis Aviyah. She was washing off the Gilulim, that's the repulsive impact and contamination of idol worship. And Rashi identifies this as a Maaseh Gerus. She went down to become a Yehudiyah, to be Mizgaya. Again, it's very difficult to know what it means, Gerus, when we're talking about a Ben Noach that entered the Kedushas Israel. And we know that when Klal Yisrael, when Makabel the Torah, there was Bila, there was Tefillah in a mikveh, but that was a Tefillah of Gerus. But the Tefillah Basparo, when Bnei Yisrael themselves was still included under the category of Bnei Noach, there was no Tefillah, there was no Kabbalas Mitzvahs, there was no Kabbalas HaTorah in Har Sinai. What is the nature of that Gerus? But it could be possible that in addition to the 7 mitzvahs that were given to all Bnei Noach, the Bnei Yaakov already had taken on additional mitzvahs. And the Rambam Perek Tesmil Chutz enumerates those mitzvahs. And therefore could be that a guy, even though it's Ben Noach, and even before Matan Torah, can create a gerus, a new Kedushas Yisrael, that goes beyond the Sheva mitzvahs Bnei Noach. There are other questions here about the technical validation of a gerus without, for example, a bezdin of shlosha. How could the tefillah of Bisya Baspar be meaningful? But it could be that there are certain special dinim that apply to this tefillah of Kodem Matan Torah. So now we have Yehudiyah, and we identify her as Bisya Baspar. Then the Gemara asks Yolda. It says that this woman Yolda S, and all the names coming afterwards of Moshe Rabbeinu. Did she give birth to Moshe Rabbeinu? But Lo Melacha, she raised Moshe Rabbeinu in her home, and therefore Kol Hamagadol Yotzav Yisomim So Beso Maila Olav Hakosuv Keilu Yolda. So when you raise an orphan, and in this case she, Bisya Baskar, raised Moshe, it's as if she had given birth to him. Now we go through the various names of Moshe Rabbeinu indicated in this pasuk in Divrei Yomi. Yered, right? It says Yoldo as Yered. Zem Moshe. Lamanikra Yered. She Yored Lem Yisrael Man Biyamav. That during Moshe Rabbeinu's period of time, Man came down. Yered came down from Shamayim. In fact, not only did Man come down during Moshe Rabbeinu's time, but it's Biskus Moshe Rabbeinu that the Man came down. And therefore, according to the Ein Yaakov, we add a word into the Girsa, the text that much as U Bitch below, and for him. And that's based on the Gemara in Tainis Taftes, in the name of Yossi, Shlosha Parnosim, Tovim, the Yisrael, Ele Mocha, V'Aaron Amot, Uve Miriam, Sholosh Matonis Tovus Nitnu Al Yonam, Elu and Be'er, Anan, Uman. Be'er Biskus Miriam, Amud Anan Biskus Aaron, and Man Biskus Moshe. Now the Gaon has a different Girsa entirely. He has Hori Torah Yisrael, but our Girsa is Man. Next, the pasuk names Moshe as Gidar. Why is Gidar? What's the meaning of the name Gidar? Shegadar Britzosem Shal Yisrael. By giving the Torah to Klal Yisrael, he set up, so to speak, fences that would protect the spiritual nature of Klal Yisrael. Chever, why is he called Chever? Al Shechiber Es Yisrael Avim Sheshamayim. He connects the people of Israel to their God in heaven. And the pasuk Atem Advekim Et Shem Elokechem Chaim Kulchem Hayom is a chibur of Yisrael Avim Sheshamayim through the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu was the sarsor, he was the go-between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael to give the Torah. And that's Chever. Socho, why is he called Socho? Shenasa lahem Yisrael kisukah. Socho is milosh sukkah, that's a protective roof. And he, with his tefillah, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to protect Klal Yisrael from Peronios, from the terrible decrees of punishment after the Chet HaEgel and after the Chet HaMaragim. Yekusiel, why is he called Yekusiel? Shekivru Yisrael le'el b'yom. That during the period of the Midbar, the generation in the wilderness, they were makavim l'Hashem b'chayom. They desired Hashem every day, meaning they depended on God for the man, for the slav, for the mea be'er, for everything. And this is the overall impact of Moshe Rabbeinu as the leader, that everything that we depend upon God during the 40 years of Midbar would come to fruition. And finally, in this pasuk, he's called Zanoach. That's a strange name, Zanoach. And what does that mean, Zanoach? So we're going to take the word Zanoach now, we're going to conjugate it as a verb. Shehizniach avonoseim shel Yisrael. Hizniach means hirchik v'azav. In other words, through his tefillos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu left behind and ignored the sins of Israel, and he would salech them, and he granted them kapara and forgiveness. And the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu is called Avi, 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 because he's a triple Avi. He's Av b'Torah, Av b'Chochma, Av b'Nevius. And these are three dimensions of Moshe Rabbeinu's greatness and his leadership role. He, of course, was the giver of Torah, Avi, Avigdor, Av HaTorah. And that would be Goder as Pirtus Yisrael, as we discussed before. Avi Socho is the Av of Chachma. He knew how to be mispal on Klal Yisrael, not to protect them from Tzoros. That's the Sukkah of Socho. And he's also called Avi Zanoach, which means Av B'Nevius. He is the paradigm, beyond the paradigm. He's unique in the views. And Afal Pisha Yodeh B'Nevuas Limam Hara Mikomakom Yavakesh Aleim Kapor. The Eila B'nei Bisya Asher Lokach Mored. Now we know that this is a reference to Kolev. Why is he called Mored? If he married Shmo Halo Kolev Shmo. His name was in fact Kolev and not Mered. So what is the meaning of the name Mered? Right, the entire pasuk is dealing with Kalev ben Yefuna. And the answer is Mered Batzas Hamarag, that he remained separate, so to speak. He removed himself and rebelled against the mission of the Meraglim when they decided that their mission was to discourage the people of Israel from entering into the land. And he, Kalev, rejected that approach and he separated himself. Vayisa es Basparo, and he married Bisya Basparo, Shemorda Begilule Beis Avia, two revolutionaries that rejected and rebelled against the system at large. These two got together, husband and wife, and they married each other because Bisya was a merit against Avodah Zarah, and Kalev was a merit against the Atzas Meraglim, and these two Mordim got together to form one entity. Now, at the beginning of Megillah Esther, the second chapter, with regard to Mordechai HaYehudi, it says, Asher Hegla miYerushalayim im Hagola Asher Haglasa im Yechanya Melch Yehuda Asher Hagla Nebuchadnezzar Melch Bavel, also that we read in the Niggin of Eicha. And on this pasuk, Rava says, Shegala Me'atzmo, that Mordechai was a self-imposed Golus. He was not sent into Golus by Nebuchadnezzar, but he decided on his own initiative to go into Golus. And it seems almost obvious to say that the reason why he opted for Golus on his own initiative is in order to be together with Klal Yisrael in that Golus and play a major role, as we know he did. And the diuk here is in the pasuk. It says Asher Higla miYerushalayim im Hagola. It should have said Asher Haya min Hagola, that he was amongst those who were exiled. But no, it says Hagla miYerushalayim im Hagola. What does that mean? Im Hagola. It means he wasn't like the rest, the balance of Klal Yisrael, who were forced to go into exile, but rather Gola me'atzmo imohim. And this we find similar to Yirmiyahu HaNavi. Also, we find about Yirmiyahu that he was Higla es Atzmo Yisrael at the time of Churban Abayis, until finally HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Now, if you ask for the reasoning, why is it that Mordechai went into Golus on his own initiative? The Torah says, Im HaGolah Asher Haglasa Haglasa Im Yechonya, which is called the Cheresh and the Mazki. These were Talmidei Gedolim, Talmidei Chacham Gedolim, outstanding scholars that lived in Yerushalayim, and they were part of the Sanhedrin. And he wanted to go to Golus together with them in order to derive and soak up their Torah. Now, why didn't Nebuchadnezzar send Mordechai into Golus? It could be that Nebuchadnezzar of Russia wanted to leave certain Jews as a zecher, not to destroy them completely, like the history of a lost nation. The pasuk then says, "Vayihi omein es Hadassah hi Esther bas Chodo, Korile Hadassah, the Korile Esther." She has two different names. She's called at the beginning of the pasuk Hadassah, and at the end of the pasuk she's called Esther. What was her real name, and why was she given the second name? Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Rabbi Meir Omer, Esther Shema. Her real true name was Esther. Paloma Mikra Shema Hadassah. Al Shema Tzadikim Shenikroyim Hadassah. She is classified and defined as a tzaddik, and a tzaddik is called Hadass. We use the Hadass, the wordle, to compare the tzaddikim to Hadass. V'chein hu Omer, and the pasuk says in Zechariah Navi, Re'isi alayla minei ish rochev al sus adom, v'hu omeid bein ha'adassim asher b'mitzula. And he's talking here about the Shekhinah that stands between the tzaddikim who are called in this pasuk Hadassim. They went into Golus into Bavel. Kidei la'ozram u'lo'tzio me'agolus. Rav Yehuda Omer Hadassah Shema. No, Her name is not Esther, but rather Hadassah. Esther, Hashem Shoysa Misateres Dvoreha. She was very tsanua. She concealed her secrets. Shenemar ein Esther Mageres Moladato Besama Kashutziva Le Mordechai. She did not reveal her nationality. Rabbi Nechemia Omer Hadassah Shema agrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Lama Nikreis Esther as an alternative explanation for the meaning of the name Esther. Shayu Umos Olam Korinosa Al Shum Istahar. Istahar is the Aramaic word for the moon, and Siara is the beauty of the moon. So she was so beautiful that they compared her to the moon. Benazi Omer Esther Shema. Benazi goes back to the Shita Rabbi Meir. Her true original name was Esther. Why was she called Hadassah? Shalo Aruka Velo Ktsara Isa El Beinanis K'Hadassah. She was not too tall, nor was she too short. She was average height, like the Hadassah. Rabbi Yeshuv ben Karchamar Esther Shema. Her real name was Esther, so why she called Hadassah? She wrote Yerakro Kes Oisa. She was like the Hadass, and she was green. And even though she had a green complexion, nevertheless she looked so beautiful in the eyes of the world, the nations, and Achashverosh. Why, if she didn't have any absolute natural beauty, why was she so beloved? So attracted to, and the whole world appreciated her beauty. Because chut shel chesed mishoch aleh, certain kind of a grace, a chut shel chesed, a pearl necklace of chesed was, in a sense, stretched over her. And that came because HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought down this chut of chesed from Shemayim. Then the pasuk says, "Vayihi omenes Hadassah Mordechai he Esther Bastoldo ki ein lo av va'em." And what does it mean? Ki ein lo av va'em. It says in the next part of the pasuk, "Ubimotz avia v'ima lekacha Mordechai lo labas." So the Gemara asks, "Ubimotz avia v'ima lamali." Why did the pasuk have to sort of repeat itself to tell me that her parents had died? It says already in the beginning of the pasuk, pretty outspoken, ki ein lo av va'em. So why do you need a b'mos avia v'ima? And the Gemara answers, Omer of Acha, the reason why the pasuk has to tell me that b'mos avia v'ima, that she didn't even have neither a father nor a mother for one day. Ibarta Beis Avia, during the pregnancy period, when Esther was an embryo, her father died. And Yoladeta, at the time that she gave birth, Mesa Ima, the mother died in childbirth. Now, when the pasuk says Ein lo av va'em, it means that at the time of Ibur, she already has an Av. So he's called an Av, but the pasuk is telling me that at the time of Leda, she no longer has an Av. But there is an Av. He's not alive anymore. And as far as the status of a mother is concerned, she's not considered as a mother if B'shas Leda, the baby dies. That's not called imohus. They have to live together for at least a minimum amount of time. Pasuk says, "Remos avia v'ima lekacha Mordechai lo labas." Anna. Now we have the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Shum Rabbi Meir al tikri. Don't read it labas el labayis, meaning that she, Esther, was married to Mordechai. Bechenu Omer, with regard to Uriah Achiti in Shmuel Beis Perikid Beis, Vilarush Ein Kol, Hi'im Kivsa Achas Ktana Asher Kana Vayichayeha, Vatigdal Imo, V'im Banov Yachdav, Mipito tochal umikoso tishte ubecheko tishkav vatehi lo kibas. So the Navi has a mashal that Uriah Achiti is considered in this pasuk like an ish rash, like a very poor person. And Bathsheba, his wife, is as if she was Avsha Agdola Ima, Kivsa Agdola Ima. She was like a mature sheep. So Mishum de Becheko Tishkav Havisle Kibas, the pasuk doesn't seem to stick together, flow together as one logical presentation. The Torah says that she was kivsa genola imo, and then it says vatilo kibas, and in the pasuk it says ubecheko tishka. Does that mean she's a bath? Kibas can't be kibas. Ella, but rather the Torah is telling us that Bathsheba became to Uriah kibayis. You don't read it as a bas, but as a bayis, meaning she became the wife of Uriah Achiti. Now, Hachanami here too, with regard to Esther, the pasuk means, but right, let's read the pasuk again. It means he took her as a bayis, as a wife. Now, with regard to Esther, which is in the Beis Hanoshim, it says, "Vatitav ha'nara beinov, vatisach chesed lefanov, vayvaheles tamrukev esmanosel laseisla, vesheva hanaros aruyos lasesla mibeis hamel." Omar Rava interprets the Sheva hanaros Aruyos lasesla mibeis hamelech. Shohaisa mona bohem yemei hashabbos. So she had Sheva naros, and with these Sheva naros, she was able to know when Shabbos was. She would give the name, I don't know, out loud or at least in her mind, of each one of her Sheva naros corresponding to a particular day of the week. And one naro would serve her on Sunday, the other on Monday, etc., until it became the turn of the seventh. And then she knew it was Shabbos. The pasuk says, "Vayishanea v'es narosel l'tov beis hanosh." Here we have a machlokas amoraim. What was Vayishanea? We're talking about Haggai, Shomer, and Noshim. How did he Vayishanea as Esther ben Arosel from other women? Omar Rav Shechila Machal Yehudi. She was different than all the other girls that were taken by the Shomer Haggai under his supervision because she was given kosher meals. Shmuel Omar Shechila Kodle de Chazire. That she was fed the shuman of pigs. Now she was anusa b'achilasa. She had no choice but to, that's what she had to eat, and therefore onen shal kach, she was not punished. But Tosfos, on the other hand, writes, this is the last Tosfos, chas v'sholem he lo isochel, so she didn't eat it. I don't know exactly, according to Tosfos, how she survived. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, what was the change in her diet? Zaronin. These are kidneys. Pulim vadashim ores v'dochim. So, in other words, if she was fed machal Yehudi, so v'yishaneh v'snaroseh means shina osa naroseh mishar noshim linyin kach she'achila machal Yehudi. And even Hanaros with Tzidkonios, they also ate Ochel Yehudi. Now, if we say Achila Basar Chazir, then it means Shino Sa Mishara Yehudim She'ena ochel machol zeh. Oshino so mishar noshim litin lamachol shemen shamein v'tov. Mitoch ones she'ed. And as far as echila zaronim, it means shino so mishar noshim lino kitzadikim she'ochlim zaronim. No, she didn't want to eat machol sasuros, but she ate zaronim. The Chenu Omer will show that zaronim are very good for tzaddikim to separate them from any ma'achol tomei, because with regard to Tamil, Chanani Michal Bazaria, the pasuk says, "Vayhi meltzar no say as pas bagam." V'yayin mishteim v'nosim lem zeronim. In the previous pasuk, it says, "U'mitzas yomim asara nira mareim tov u'briei basar." So even though they didn't eat the pas hamelach, they only ate zeronim. Nevertheless, mareim, they looked very good, very healthy. It says in Esther, "Vagia tor na'arav and na'arol of oil hamelach achashverosh v'keitz hayosla yidas hanoshim shnei masar chodesh kicheni b'lu yemei merukayhem shisha chadashim b'sheven amor v'shisha chadashim b'psamim samrukei hanoshim." And the Gemara clarifies this. What does it mean, sheven amor? Two opinions in this. Rabbi Chia bar Abba Omar, what is shemen amor? Stochas. Rabbi Yehuda Omar, shemen zayish lo hevi shlish. So I understand very well, Rav Huna, that shemen amor means shemen shalo igia l'shlish, shlish gidula. But what is Rabbi Chia's opinion about stochas? Balsam, shemen, oil of balsam oil. Not so clear as to what this shemen afarsim is. And shemen zayish lo hevi shlish. Let's just take a minute to read here. Give me a second. Yeah. Okay, so he says more in English, very similar to the Hebrew. It's M-Y-R-R-H. Okay. And what is that? Balsam. That's Rabbi Chia. Rav Huna says the oil of olives that have not attained 1/3 of their growth, normal growth. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, on pakinon shemen zayish lo hevi shlish. And this is listed in the Mishnah in Menachos on Pei Hey. And pakinon cannot be used as the oil of the mincha offering. The lama sachinoso. Why do they take the oil of balsam and use it to smear the body? Shemashir es haseir ma'aden es abosim. So it's a hair remover and it also causes skin to glow. Ba'erev hi ba'ol ba'boker yishava. Okay. Seconds. Amar Rabbi Yochanan mitoch gnuso shalosah rasha lemanu shvacha shivcha. We're talking about Achashverosh, who would have relations with one of these women, and then he would send them out. Shaloya mishamish bitosa bayom el balal. So it's Baboker, they were sent away. By Erev, he had the relations with them. But he Esther noses chen beinei kol roel. Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Omer Abelazar Malavi Shel Kolecha V'Echad Midmasalo Ke Umasa. She appeared to each person as a member of his own nation. Again, we didn't know, nobody knew what nation she was. But Tilokach Esther El Hamelech Achashverosh El Beis Machuso B'Chodesh Asiru Chodesh Teves. So Esther was taken to King Achashverosh in his palace on the 10th month, the month of Teves. And that's a pasuk in the second chapter. B'tama dover shesiva kodesh baruch hu shtilok chodesh zeh dafka lefi shu yerech she nene guf min haguf. Right, it's a cold month of Teves. Now we're in Teves. We know how cold it is here, and the tzina, the coldness, brings a situation where one guf lying next to the other guf would sort of warm each other up. And this was a kavod ben Shamayim lechavev es Esther al Achashverosh. Okay, so Achashverosh, would be more likely to desire Esther in this month, and God arranged Esther's turn to be in Teves so that she would be appointed as queen and would be in a position to save the Jews. Vayehav hamelch es Esther mikol anashim. So Nashim are Ba'ulos, and then it says B'sulos Amarav, Bikesh Litom Tam B'sula, Tam Ba'ula. Tam. So again, Bikesh Litom Tam Shel B'sula Tam, and Bikesh Litom Tam Shel Ba'ula Tam. Vayas hamelech mishte gadol chol sorav ha'choda veis mishte Esther v'anochel medino sasa v'yitein mases yad hamelech. And now this pasuk explicates all the inyanim, that which Achashverosh did to be Mephias as Esther, so that she would reveal her nation, her nationality. But he was not successful. First, Vayasamel Mishta Gadol, Avad Mishtaya. He did a Mishta L'Kavod Esther. She did not do for any other women. Below Galia, and she did not reveal her nationality. Dal Dole Karga, which means Omar Liamo Bishvil Esther Ani Meniach Lahem Es Mas HaGugolos. He relaxed the head tax in the name of Esther. She still refused to reveal her origins. And then Vayite Masas B'Yanamelach Shadar Paradishnei. He sent gifts to important people in her name, yet she did not reveal to him her origins. Then it says, "Ubika Beitz Psulo Sheinis Mordechai Yoshev B'Shar HaMelech." So why did he have to emphasize here that there was again a kibbutz of the Sulos Sheinis? I mean, Esther was already chosen. Why was there a kibbutz Sheinis of the Sulos? But apparently, once Achashverosh realized that he was not able to pump Esther for the secret of her origin, then Azal Shakal ate some Mordechai. He went and asked for counsel from Mordechai as to how he could convince her to reveal her nationality, her origins. Omar, Mordechai says, Achashverosh, Ein Isha Miskana Ela B'Yerech Chaverta. A woman is not made jealous except through intimacy with another woman. So by gathering the maidens again, you will make Esther jealous and force her to reveal her origins to you. Vafilu Hachi Lo Galil. Siv Ein Esther Magedes Molanit. So one might ask, whose side is Mordechai on over here? That he's giving an Eitzah to try to pump. Mordechai was the one who instructed Esther not to reveal her origins to Achashverosh. Why would he advise Achashverosh as to how to elicit the information from Esther? The Maharsha suggests that Mordechai's true hope was that when Achashverosh would again gather the maidens, he would find one that he liked more than Esther. That was his hope. Omer Lotza, my Diksiv, what does the pasuk mean in Eov? This is the response of Elihu to Eov. And here we turn to Daf Yimon Beis. Lo yigra mitzadik eno. He did not withdraw his eyes from a righteous person. Hashem Ashkiya B'Maisa Tzadikim L'Shalom Scham Miyad Mida B'Mida. The Af Im Sar Misakev, even if it's delayed, Yikablu at the end, the Tzadikim will receive the full reward. Mischar Tznius Haisa Ba B'Rachel Zachsa V'Yatza Menu Shaul Mischar Tznius Haisa Ba Shaul Zacha V'Yatzas Mimenu Esther. There's a whole line of tznius, the meat of tznius that's being passed down and bequeathed through the generations. First, we start the tznius of Rachel, and Rachel did not reveal the secret that it was Leah that was being given as a wife to Yaakov. And Zachsim and Shaul was also very tzadua. And Esther was also a tznuah. And Hashem is Mishalim Tzadikim after, could be after a long time, Mida Kineged Mida with that Tzetza'im. And Kineged the tznius that they themselves were knowing, then Hashem Lamala will be knowing that tznius with their off.